do not move off the roadway, you are subject to arrest and you will be arrested.
What's the charge?
We all stay on the road. They can't arrest us all. We all stay on the road. They can't arrest us all. We all stay on the road.
You heard the
Sir,
judge.
you're under arrest for contravention of court order.
Arrest us all. We all stay on the road.
You heard the judge. Take away the barrier.
Please, so we can work.
In the early 90s, in 93 it was. I was in Paris at the time and following the news quite closely. But I kind of thought that what I should do is something that I'm close to, rather than be an outside observer going in to somebody else's history. I thought that a more authentic kind of work I could do would be about a history that I could be close to and speak from. And even in the Parisian newspapers were news items about what was going on with the protests about clear-cut logging in British Columbia at the time. I saw in one of the newspapers that there was going to be a major protest at Clayoquot Sound on August 9th in 1993. So I immediately packed up and jumped on the plane and came here. And I realized to do a large-scale work, I'd need a large format camera too, on a tripod. And to do that properly and to handle all the logistics of such a process required assistance. So Paul Arbet, a friend of mine at the time who was helping me with some of my studio photography too, he came along and we camped we found out where the protest was going to be and arrived and camped on the site. And the next morning, everybody came, there was crowds coming up the road and at the site where we were camped actually. And we waited there and positioned our camera. I kind of figured out where things would be, and and then of course the police arrived and were keeping an eye on everything, and then when the protest was happening, people were being arrested for not letting the trucks pass, and then I got as many photographs as I could. I ended up picking 3 photographs, two color and 2 black and white format, large format, and then I brought all my material here to the studio and proceeded to prepare the large canvases that the photographs were blown up at Colorific up the street and then laminated onto the canvas. I didn't want it to just be a documentary photograph. It had to be a painting and relate to painting as a technique and the physicality of a painting. So what I did was do 2 cutaways out of each of the 3 photographs that created basically 6 more that then were laminated onto slightly smaller canvases and made into the full grouping of 9 canvases altogether that forms the work. It made a very, very large work as a result, of course, so which was the point of it. It had to be a spectacle, that conveyed the feeling of the scale of the protest and the spectacle and all the people in the picture. Well, I was, I'm constantly producing work and coming up with ideas for new work and what to do, and my work is quite varied too. But I consider myself a painter in effect, even though my work is largely the subject matter is carried through with the photography part of it. But one of the important themes in painting is history painting. Paintings usually very large scale that touch upon important events of current times, like in history paintings of the past, like The Raft of the Medusa by Jericho, early 19th century, and Liberty Leading the People by Delacroix, for instance, and Picasso did his versions of history, like Guernica was a classic history painting of the modernist period. And that's a challenge, is to find a moment of contemporary history that you can make a work about. And I tried various things. And the reason I knew that was going to be an important event is because it was reported in the newspapers. that would be, there were some protests previously and arrests, so it was in the news, and then it mentioned that this one would be the main one. So, I came all the way from France just to come to take the picture and kind of work on it, and so I can't claim to be an activist, but I was interested in and certainly sympathized with what was going on. Now, the Clayoquot Protest piece was a very special and distinct piece. It's almost the only really specifically defined history work that I did of that scale, especially. But it's not something you do too much of. It doesn't. It's not the only objective in my work as an artist is to do that, but it's a part of it, an important part of it, and and images of modern life tell people about who they are and what living in the world today is all about, and the works are only suggestive. I don't prescribe anything, that something has to be this way or be that way. It's very open in terms of how people interpret where they fit into it. The Clayoquot Protest piece has its own subject matter as well, and what for me is important is all the people. As I see it, the protest is. I'm sure everybody knew that they would be moved out of the way and those trucks would proceed. So it's kind of a performance in effect. It's a symbolic performance of resistance. All the people in the picture are in effect performing their political beliefs and performing their public service in effect. And it's a very public piece. That's why I ended up giving it to the Vancouver Art Gallery, who would keep it. And people 50 years, 100 years from now, hopefully will be looking at it and recognizing what was going on back in 1993. All those people in the picture had something to say about how they could change the world, bring things to people's attention, for one thing, And the story goes on. It's not over yet, It's really it's an ongoing process about the ecological issues and the climate change issues that are going on with that, Ideally, it would inspire people to join the movement in effect, right? And there's generations there too, and there were some children in the pictures and on the site, and they're growing up now, and they'll have children, and they'll be able to go to the Vancouver Art Gallery when this is on and say, "There I am. This is where I was 50 years ago," or whatever it is, and it's now your job to carry on, etc. All those kinds of narratives fold into the outcome of the work. The work isn't just. Personally, I think the work's quite beautiful. It's a beautiful moment, even though it's also a bit tragic too that it had to be. But it's a beautiful moment and an important moment in people's lives, and I'm glad that I was able to pull all that together. That says, I live in the world and I'm responsible for what I do, and what I know and what inspires me, I'll pass on to you in the hope that you will be inspired, because that's how we communicate. That's how we live socially. When we live socially, we share our thoughts, we share our passions, and what we think is important to do to make life better for everybody. That's how I see it anyways. I think art's really important. It's my life. But, it's not the only thing. It's and art cannot carry the full burden of everything that needs to be done. It's a political process that goes on in other dimensions as well. Writers and media people and people that broadcast the message and the people that are there that stand in the way of the machine that is rolling over everything, right? All of those actions are, as I said, they're kind of a performance too. I just do what I can do which is what I do best anyways. So I think the Clayoquot Protest piece will stand out and will last for a long time. And that's why I'm glad it's in the collection of the Vancouver Art Gallery, and they'll bring it out every once in a while, probably not too often, because you have to, you can't wear the picture out by showing it over and over and over and over again. Even though Guernica hangs pretty well constantly in the Reina Sofia in Madrid, that's the power of art, and that's the great thing about art, is that it can make things real and capture time and capture events and bring events from the past into the present. And I think, on that thought, Clayoquot Protest that happened 31 years ago, it, as a work of art, it brings it up to now. It brings it alive again. That moment lives on. Art for me is a real language, and there's a lot of stories implicit in every art. Every picture tells a story.